Hey guys, this is Chelsea. Welcome to my channel. Today I'll be reviewing all of the movies and TV that I consumed this month for the month of June. I have a lot to get through, and so I also did videos separately on the books that I read this month. You want to check that out, but I just wanted to do it separately because there's a lot to get through and I don't want this video to be too long, so let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so the first movie I want to talk about is Godzilla Minus One. I saw this on Netflix, and I first want to start off by saying the film is beautiful to watch. I feel like the color grading was really great, and the sets are really beautiful, and Godzilla himself was very realistic, which I was not expecting. Like, I feel like it was not CGI at all. Of course, I know it was, but I was watching it and I was like, damn, like this guy looks like he's right in front of my face, which is kind of insane. But I really liked that aspect of it and how the army came into play with helping defeat Godzilla. And don't really watch a lot of Godzilla films. I don't know if that's a common theme or not, but I really enjoyed the community and the camaraderie with that and how they were trying to problem solve. And the ideas they came up with to get rid of Godzilla were actually like pretty brilliant. And I was like right on board with them. But that being said, I did feel like the acting took me out of it a lot. I don't know Japanese and I don't watch Japanese films that frequently, so I don't know if it's really common to have this acting. But when they were having the really high emotional scenes, like with the crying and the fighting and stuff, I just didn't find it to be really realistic, and I kind of found it hard to get into that part of it. But I do feel like it was a good length, and the characters were all very intentional and necessary, and I enjoyed just it all, like all around. It was very entertaining, I found, but like I said, the acting just was not my favorite part of it. I also watched The Watchers. I did a review on both the book and the movie, so I won't talk about it in this video, but if you want to go watch that comparison, you're more than free to do so. It's my first review of both the book and the movie of media, so I think I might try and make that a series possibly. I also watched Inside Out too, but I also did a video on this, so you can check that out if you would like. I actually am pretty proud of that video because I feel like it shows me coming out of my shell a little bit more, and I feel like I'm showing more of my personality on camera. I'm like trying to get more comfortable with this, so if you want to go and leave me like a you know a helpful comment, that'd be really great. I also saw American Fiction. My sister has been telling me to watch this movie for months now, and I finally watched it just kind of by myself alone one night, and I was kind of disappointed in it a little bit because the premise is there's this writer and he has not sold any books in a very long time, or maybe ever, and so he writes this very stereotypical about the Black experience and what the caricature of being Black in America is, basically. And so he wrote it as sort of a joke, but then it gets all this acclaim and people are very much into it and they want more from him. But he's battling with all the success that he's had from this book that's supposed to be a joke. And then also wanting to like step into being more of a writer and getting his work out there. So there's that battle that he has. However, I realized that premise and I was really into that part of the story. But when I watched the movie, it was more about his family and his background and like the town he grew up in. And there's a romance element to it with Erica Alexander, who I love. But yeah, I just feel like the balance between the book and his family life were not in balance at all. And I wish that there was more of the book in there and that struggle that he had there. Um, but I mean, of course, the acting was great. I feel like they had a really good cast, but I just wish that there was more of the book in there and sort of like the struggle with wanting to be a writer, but also feeling like you have to perhaps pander to the audience, unfortunately, and wanting to sort of grow his career in a more positive way. I just thought that would have been more interesting to have in the movie. And finally, I watched A Quiet Place Day One. I saw this a few days ago. I was considering doing a separate video on it, but I just feel like I didn't like it enough to make a full video on it, so I'm just going to include it in this wrap up. So I was very excited about it because, of course, we were talking about the inception of these monsters, how they came to be, what the world was forced to succumb to after these monsters arrived. And I really loved the first movie. Second movie, could have done without it. I felt like it was like the exact same as the first movie. There was not a whole lot of difference between the two of them. And I felt like it was just not necessary at all. This third one, I was excited because Lupita's in it. I love her. And I was really enthralled in the beginning with the monsters coming from space and just how quickly the world changed, right? And it was really interesting to see the idea of what happens when there's chaos happening around you, when you're in this very, very deep sea state of fear and you cannot express that. You can't scream, you can't really express yourself in a vocal way, so like you have to hold all of that in. And so what happens with humanity when it cannot express itself anymore, because we are used to violence, unfortunately, and we're used to having that come out, but you can't be violent toward these creatures because they will definitely kill you. And you have to tiptoe around everything, you have to be invisible while all this chaos is happening around you and while the monsters are essentially taking over the planet. I like seeing like the immediate effects of these monsters moving in and how the military responded, like going through the sky and talking about to not speak, not to make any noise, because those people are risking their lives, right? Because they're making all this noise and then they have these announcements and then they die right after. So those were also like very interesting perspective to come from. But I feel like the characters themselves were very superficial. Like the main character, like I got that he was a very anxious person and he was struggling with how to keep himself calm amidst all the stuff that's going on, right? And I get that Lupita's character was coming in to try to help him through all of that, but I didn't really feel like the reason why he was following her around. Like there was no incident that happened really. He was just like, I'm gonna follow her, you know. And then like we get some pieces of her when she was talking about how she wanted to live her life again and how she was like in this really dark place and she hated the world and she hated everybody. And I get that, and I get like her wanting someone to help her show like what life is like again, but I just didn't feel that came across in the most effective way. And like as I'm moving through the city, they're moving to, you know, get away from the monsters, and you know, I just wasn't really into it. I feel like there wasn't a whole lot of depth with each of the characters and with the narrative that was happening. I felt like it was just kind of going along. If there is going to be a fourth movie, I don't feel like I'll go watch it because I feel like there hasn't been a whole lot of payoff thus far. So while the acting was really great, I just did not feel like the story overall was that emotive. And I just felt like it was lackluster in a lot of ways. But yeah, anyway, that was my view. Okay, we're gonna get into TV. I watched Manhunt. This is on Apple Plus, and it's about Abraham Lincoln, John Wilkes Booth, that assassination, and the process it took to actually capture John Wilkes Booth. Now it's pretty short. I think there's only like, I want to say like 8 episodes. The first episode started off right away. There's a lot of action. I was right into it. I was along for the ride. And the series as a whole is pretty dense. There's a lot packed into it, and there's a lot that I didn't know before. Like I did not know that the enslaved were actually given land and then that was taken away. Like those pieces were completely new to me, so I did learn a lot from that. But I will say that there were so many characters and there's like so much in play that I found it difficult to remember why certain characters were important in certain circumstances. So the show would just say the names of characters instead of like what I've seen in the past, or like what I sometimes prefer is if they show a scene with that character. So that it sort of rejogs my memory of why they're important. Because they would just like say certain names and I'm like, oh, okay. Like I had to stop and ask my dad like who that person was and why they were important. And so those parts kind of like made me a little bit off balance, but I will say they did a good job of explaining like the trail and how difficult it was to find him and the people that he met along the way. And they did a really good job of explaining how divided the country really was at that point, because the characters were either very, you know, for John Wilkes Booth and what he was doing, and other ones were like, why are you doing that? Like there's a lot of disagreement with the country at that time. And so they did a good job, I feel, of showing that and how divided the country was, and really how, I mean, he came and assassinated Lincoln at like the tipping point, basically. And there wasn't, okay, so what my understanding is that we're not completely clear from history how involved the government was in this assassination, like the conspiracy of all of it. We're not entirely sure how involved the government was. Like, we know the pieces and we know like the fragments of what happened and why those were important, but overall, we don't know how big it goes or how deep the rabbit hole really goes. So I understand that part wasn't really part of it. But I will say the last two episodes, I was kind of like not as into it because it was mostly a retelling of what we already saw happen, because this was the trial part of the show and the people coming to be convicted of their crimes and stuff. So it really was just a retelling of what already happened. And so that part was not as focused for me. I was kind of like just watching to see how it ended at this point. I will say, like I said, it was very dense. It was pretty packed with a lot of information and a lot of things happened. And I think it did do a good job of carrying us through and showing us throughout. Like, it was easy to follow in that sense, but there was just a lot of information that happened. And it was hard to watch because, of course, this is a time when our country thought it was cool to enslave people, and so like a lot of the violent scenes and just the mistreatment was difficult to watch. So I will say that. But overall, I would recommend the show to other people, and I do feel like Apple did a good job of the show, sort of like a historical retelling. And yeah, I digged it. Next, I watched Will Trent season 2 on Hulu. Now, first season, love Will Trent, love the cases that they did. The only thing I didn't like was the relationship in the first season. I feel like it was very angsty and it was like just stupid miscommunication. It wasn't really like, I don't know. It was just like a not really necessary part of the story, I felt. But I do feel like the first season had a lot of heart and we learned a lot about each character, and it was very like isolated and insular. And I feel like we learned a lot about each character in that first season. Second season, the only thing I really liked was the culture of the Bayou and like learning more about the people and the sort of spiritual aspect of things. And I really liked the relationship between Will and his uncle. I feel like that was beautiful to watch unfold and how he became more part of his family. And that part I really liked. All the rest of the second season, I just felt like the writing was kind of everywhere. I feel like the cases were not as interesting, and I feel like the writing just really took a tumble. Like after the first, even like the first episode, I was like, oh wow, this is really different from the first season. Like, I wonder if they actually switched the writing room, because it's just completely different from the first season. And I feel like there wasn't really a path. I felt like there wasn't really like a layout of what was happening. It kind of felt like, when you're in college and you're procrastinating on your essay and you just like write something down on paper to get it turned in. That's how this entire second season felt to me. And which is really disappointing because I love Will Trent and I've actually like considered reading the books by I think Karen Slaughter is the writer. And like I've considered reading the books, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it went downhill. I will watch the third season just to see if hopefully it picks back up and the hopefully the cases become more interesting and the heart really comes back into the show. But as of right now, like it was just a mess, I think, in my opinion. Okay. I also watched Abbott Elementary season 3 on Hulu. I loved last episode. Like that party was, I feel like that episode was so just well thought out. I feel like everything played out really well. I thought it was so funny the entire time. And of course, the will they won't they relationship, like that was beautifully wrapped up. And it was like a really great piece of writing as far as comedy goes. Like I have not seen that well thought out of comedic writing in a series in a very long time. That being said, I feel like the third season, it was hard for me. Like, I feel like the comedy for me is not that consistent. Like, I'm laughing hysterically one episode. The next episode, I'm not laughing like at all. Like the episode when they had the Dare program, like I did not laugh at that the entire episode. And my sister was like, "What are you talking about? That was so funny." But I just could not get into the episode. And so I feel like it's not very well balanced for me. I feel like it's very hit or miss for the comedy in each episode. Like for this season, I feel like there were maybe like a quarter of episodes that I didn't really laugh at or didn't really find funny. But I do feel like Quinta is such a smart writer and she really knows people and she really knows like relationships between people, because all of these characters are so funny individually, but when they come together, it's just that much more hilarious and that much more entertaining. And so she is a great writer, and of course I'll watch the fourth season. Like, of course I'm gonna watch Abbott. It's like such a smart show and such a smart concept. The last thing I'm gonna talk about is A Perfect Match. I saw this on Netflix, and I do admit I do like those romantic, like, reality shows. They're just really funny to me. But this season, I really liked Jessica because she is, I mean, she definitely like went back to that guy, and they were not meant for each other, obviously. But like, that's the whole point of the show, right? It's like, I don't feel like this is actually people looking for their perfect match. I really feel like this is just for entertainment purposes. And a lot of the people are in their mid 20s, and there was a guy on there who was a bit older, and it was so interesting to see like the stark contrast between the two of them, and how he's like over that sort of like drama, hopefully, like being caught up in drama and everything, and he's like hopefully more secure with himself. But just seeing that like discrepancy was like really eye opening, because I do feel like we all go through that phase of like being highly insecure, wanting to fit in with the group. But it was really cool because, especially the women, like when they talked about what they wanted from a relationship and what they wanted for themselves, they were very like acute and they were very focused on that. But then they would go back to the guy, the romantic partner, and it's like they completely forgot all of that. It's like, did you just forget all the really interesting things you said about what you want from a partner? And you're going to this dude who gives you none of that. Like, he has none of those things that you just mentioned that you wanted. But Jessica was interesting to me because she did a good job of expressing what she knew she deserved and what she wanted from this life and what she wanted her daughter to grow up seeing and what a healthy relationship was and everything. But then she just went back to that guy, and that's understandable. Like, we are all human and we all just want to be loved, even if that means trying to make what's in front of us work. And in this house, like, if you are not matched up, you are kicked out. So there's that level of sort of heightened need as well. And these are people who make their lives on social media and just being in public eye. So I feel like you're even more inclined to try to make things work because you want to be in the public eye and you want to get your check, which is completely understandable. But yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like when I watch these shows, I have to remind myself that I'm not looking at these shows to be like a better person or to like come on the other side as like more acute to what my life needs to be like or anything. Like, I'm just looking at this strictly for entertainment purposes. Like, I just want to be entertained and get on with my day. And when I come from it from that perspective, it's much funner to watch and it's more easier for me to focus on than to try to make it into something that it's just not going to be. All right, that's actually all the movies and TV that I watched this month. So thank you for watching. If you are interested in watching my other reviews, please go check that out. And I also did a review on the books that I watched. So thank you for watching if you're here till the end, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.